Number one is you have a strong sense of what is right and what is wrong. That is to say, you have a strong sense of justice. That is, if you are a super Aspie. Now, I got to say that not every Aspie is what I would call a super Aspie, but there are some Aspies either because they're naturally this way or maybe they have learned over the years how to focus and how to create an environment for themselves where they can be more efficient and more effective throughout life. And one of the traits of a super Aspie, one of these people who have risen above and managed to manage their life circumstances, has a strong sense of right and wrong. If you see somebody doing something that is, say, illegal or just unethical, it bothers you immensely, and sometimes you will even speak up and say something. You will try to implement justice because, well, you just have that inner sense of right and wrong. Number two is other people must lie about you if they're going to defame you. Now, I know you're not perfect. Nobody is. We all have our flaws. We have our faults. But if you are one of those people, one of those rare people who has this strong sense of justice, and that applies to you as well, then what is going to happen is when these other people try to engage in a smear campaign and try to bully you down verbally, talk you down verbally to others, what are they going to say about you? You've got this strong sense of right or wrong. You apply those principles to yourself. You try to do what is right in every situation, every circumstance. What could they possibly say because they don't know you completely? They don't know your little flaws, or very few of them. What are they going to say about you to demean you in the eyes of others? Well, they're going to lie about you. Now, have you ever had somebody smear you behind your back and they were saying things that are untruthful? You just may be a super Aspie because, hey, when they have to lie about you to defame you, isn't that kind of a compliment? I know it hurts when other people believe the lies, but still, it is a testimony. It is a testament to your character. Number three is this. You tend to deflect attention. Now, I don't know about you, but even when I was a little kid, on my birthday, and yeah, I've had coming on nearly 70 birthdays. Not quite yet, but nearly 70 birthdays. And as I like to say, over the years, I've learned a thing or two from experience, and I want to share with you what I've learned. But remember when you were a kid and they would sing happy birthday? Most people, they think that's cool, especially little kids. And I think maybe when I was a kid, I appreciated it. But as I got older, it started to get kind of corny. You know, you're in a restaurant and somebody says, hey, he had a birthday last week, or he's going to have a birthday next week. And the next thing you know, the whole staff of the restaurant circled around you, maybe brought you out a little cupcake with a candle in it, everybody's singing happy birthday. A super Aspie doesn't like that because you don't like attention on yourself. Okay, you appreciate it if you get an award. You appreciate it if you are recognized for doing something right. But you're not really comfortable with it. You know, a lot of people, they kind of gloat and they will kind of feign humility. Oh, I didn't really deserve it, something like that. But deep inside, they're gloating. Well, Aspies may appreciate it, but they just don't like the attention. They tend to deflect attention to others. One place you will never see an Aspie, and I say never, never say never, but one place you will never see an Aspie is sitting on a float in a parade waving to people. That is the last place you want to be. You don't like being the center of attention. Rather, you prefer to deflect attention. The fourth character trait of a super Aspie is they have empathy for lonely people. Now, every time I talk about Aspies and their empathy, people wonder what I'm talking about because Aspies aren't supposed to have empathy. One of the traits of an Aspie is they don't have empathy. That's because people confuse the different types of empathy. There is effective or affectionate empathy, which fits very well with the profile of a person with Asperger syndrome. Then there is what is called cognitive empathy, and that is the ability to recognize facial expressions and moods in body language, what people are thinking by the way they're acting. That type of empathy, not very strong in the typical person with Asperger syndrome. But when it comes to affection, when it comes to affective empathy, we may not show it outwardly, but inside it is there, and it is it's almost like a burning fire. I mean, you really hurt for people, particularly when you see them being alone, because you've been there, you've done that, you know how it feels, and it reignites that feeling within you. Number 5 is this: you are often disappointed. And when we say disappointed, what we mean is this, and I think it's kind of obvious what it means. But you expect others to be considerate of you. You expect others to be considerate of other people. And when they are not, they just disappoint you. Because we have in our mind this notion of how things ought to be, the way things should be. And we often make should statements. That should not happen. This should happen. People should not be that way. Why are people doing this? Because, again, we have that ideal perception of what reality should be. Well, the problem, obviously, is reality doesn't live up to our concept of what it ought to be, and because of that, we're constantly being disappointed in other people. So let me ask you this. Last few hours, if you happen to be out and about, maybe at the workplace, maybe gone shopping, maybe visiting relatives or whatever, were you disappointed in the way they behaved? Most people, typical people, neurotypical people, yeah, sometimes they get a little disappointed, but by and large, they have come to accept reality as it is without those should statements. Whereas an Aspie, a super Aspie, just never gets over that. And by the way, I think that is something that is very positive. Frustrating. It can be, we could just go crazy. Geez, I mean, not literally, but, why are people doing this, But it doesn't go away, and I think that's a sign of a super Aspie. Again, that's a very positive thing. Number 6 is this. Speaking of people who are considerate, you are a door holder. All right, a lot of people do that. Naturally, when you're out and about, maybe at home, you go out a door, somebody's following you, and you just naturally hold the door. There are a lot of people who, it's not that they're rude, it's that they're not paying attention. And they just let the door slam on somebody. And they don't even know it. They don't even notice. But because you're an Aspie, well, not just because you're an Aspie, a lot of people do this, but because you're an Aspie, you tend to be very cognitive, very aware of your surroundings. And if there's somebody behind you, chances are, yeah, you've been surprised a few times, but chances are you know where people are, because you were very uncomfortable being around them. It's kind of like, I hate to use this analogy, but it's kind of like being surrounded by a pack of dogs, mean dogs. You're very keenly aware of where they are and that they are there. Well, because of that, that manifests itself in a very positive reaction, and that is you tend to be kind and considerate to other people. Well, we kind of boil that down to saying you're a door holder, but that's just one of the things you might do. If you're walking into a door and another person is walking to the door, you may stop and let them through first. If you're out and about shopping, you tend to stop and let other people pass rather than just kind of running into them or saying, "Excuse me, I'm first." That's just the way you are. You are a super Aspie. Number 7. Others know that they can trust you. Now, they may not say it, they may not always act like it, but the fact of the matter is, because you are an Aspie, you are the type of person who is extremely reliable. It bothers you immensely not to keep your word. We talked about this in another video, but one thing that Aspies cannot do, and cannot do with exceptions, is they just can't lie. They don't like to lie. Now, that's just not verbal lying, but if you say you're going to be someplace and you don't show up because you just don't want to, That's very unusual for an Aspie because people have expectations of you and you feel obligated, sometimes to a fault, to fill those obligations. You do things that other people would never do. If you owe somebody money and the other person has forgotten about it, most people would, oh well, what's the difference then? I'll just keep it. But not a super Aspie. Because it's just dwelling in your mind. You can't get rid of it. Drives you nuts till you pay that person. So Aspies, the super Aspie, is the type of person who they're just dependable. They're trustable. Now, if you have a job, this is a problem with some Aspies. They can't hold a job. But if you have a job and you have it consistently, have a good source of income, chances are you have an excellent credit score because you like to pay your bills on time. You're reliable. That's if you are a super Aspie. Now, I'm not saying every Aspie is somebody who pays their bills on time every time. Okay, there are some exceptions, but you are somebody, if you're a super Aspie, you are somebody who people can trust. Not that they do trust you, but they know they can, but they may pretend you're not because that's the way people are. You know, they don't like somebody who has a trait that's better than them, so they will try to knock you down a little bit. They want to take you down a peg or two so you're down to their level. Number 8, you're a problem solver. Now, when we talk about problem solvers, there's a lot of different angles you can approach this. As I was preparing my presentation, I got to thinking about this. And that is that Aspies tend to be good at things like math because they think in orderly. You know, they're just orderly thinkers. And it's not just math that they're good at, but they tend to be good at solving problems. Now, the challenge for a super Aspie is getting other people to listen to them because, well, you know, you're an Aspie, you're kind of a nobody, you're out there on the fringe, and you're not fitting in with society as a whole, particularly in the workplace. But hey, if they just listen to you, you can tell them, here's how you fix this. Here's how we can make this run more efficient. We can be much more effective if we do it this way. You are a problem solver. You see the problems, and those problems drive you nuts because you know, it would be much more efficient to do it differently. Why can't other people see this? Why will they not listen to you? Well, reality is if you're at the workplace, there is a social hierarchy thing going on, and you're out of it. They don't care how to solve the problem. They care about where they are positioned in the social hierarchy, and they don't want somebody else coming in solving a problem, making them look bad. So you're kind of out of it. But the truth of the matter is you could solve the problem, and sometimes if you are fortunate enough to be working for a manager or a supervisor who values your input, you will actually solve problems. Okay, now here's where it expands a little bit. It's not just practical problems like in the workplace or math problems, but sometimes people problems. You're very good not at reading facial expressions, but when you see somebody hurting, you can understand what they're going through, and you can sometimes, not always, but you can understand here's what this guy needs to do. This is what this woman needs to do to make this thing work. I recall one time a guy was having problems with his wife. The relationship was just kind of on the skids. And I said, I got an idea. Why don't you send your wife flowers to her workplace to surprise her? You didn't like that idea. Maybe you didn't want to spend $50, I don't know, flowers. But yeah, that's the point, is we tend to be problem solvers. That is to say, a super Aspie. Problem solvers. Number 9 is you have learned to build effective boundaries. Now, I think nearly every Aspie learns to do this, but sometimes it takes a while. You get burned a few times. You know, it's kind of like you touch a hot iron and you say, gee, I'm not going to do that again. But sometimes an Aspie has to touch the iron 3 or 4 times. Not literally, I'm speaking figuratively here, but you have to touch the personal relationship iron multiple times before you figure out, this thing's hot, it's hurting me, I'm not going to touch it anymore. But once you get to that point, okay, now you've got a boundary. You're not going to get in that type of relationship ever again. or at least you're going to try not to. So now you have graduated, you've moved on up to a super Aspie that has built effective boundaries. Number 10 is you are a good listener. All right, if there's anything an Aspie is good at, that is listening to other people. Now, personally, I had a difficult time listening to public speakers. Classroom, my mind would drift off, go to church. Okay, give the guy 15 seconds, and after that, my brain is out of there. I'm sitting there, but my brain, I'm thinking of something else. Okay, I'm probably worse than most people in that area. But when it comes to individual people, they've got problems, whatever. If they bring them to me, I'll just sit there and listen. I may not even give them advice. Sometimes I'll say something if they ask me to, but I'll just listen. I can listen to people for hours. Okay, maybe 1 hour tops. There was a guy who used to call me, and literally, he'd be on the phone talking nonstop for an hour or two. And I'd listen to him. And I empathized with him. I don't think he would ever take my advice. If I don't recall him ever asking for it, but he just needed somebody he could talk to and somebody who wouldn't constantly interrupt him or put him down. I was that guy. I was the go-to guy, so he'd give me a call and talk to me for, endlessly. And I understood. He needed someone to talk to. You ever lean on furniture, sitting on the floor, and you lean on furniture to watch TV, and the furniture moves? That's frustrating. An Aspie, a super Aspie, is a type of person the people can lean on, and you don't move. So they feel comfortable with you in that role. Otherwise, they may not even talk to you. Okay, that's number 10. Where are we? Number 11. A super Aspie. Not every Aspie, but a super Aspie is one who has learned to be comfortable with himself or herself. You have learned to be comfortable with yourself. You understand that, you're a little bit different, and everybody is a little bit different, so it is normal to be abnormal. You finally got a hold of that principle. It is normal to be abnormal, because everybody has a flaw. Now, a super Aspie, somebody who is comfortable with themselves, that is to say they are, what is that expression? Feel comfortable in their own skin or something like that. That's kind of an odd expression, but yeah, I get it. That's you. If you're a super Aspie, you understand who you are. You understand the rest of the world, other than other Aspies and empaths, are a bit different. They think you're a space alien. You think they're all space aliens because they're so. They think you're weird. You think they're weird. I mean, they have some super flaws from your perspective, but you understand that. You get it. Okay, we're different. What's the big deal? You have learned to be comfortable in your own skin with yourself. And number 12 rather, we'll close with this one. That is, you're an explainer. Now, because you think orderly, because you can take complex problems and like mathematics, and you can figure them out, that applies to explaining things. Now, there are some concepts, some principles that people try to explain, and one of the frustrations I had in school was you'd have a teacher who'd get up and try to explain something, and you were more confused when they were done than when they started. But a super Aspie is one who can take those complex, maybe they're a problem or maybe it's just something they're trying to explain. You can take complexities and you can explain them in an orderly and logical fashion so even a dummy can understand it. Anybody can understand it when you're done with it. So if you are a super Aspie, you may very well be a writer because you know how to put things in words. And you take maybe a news story or whatever, if you want to write it out. Maybe you did this in class when you were in school. And you can order that story in such a way that it makes perfect sense and it's interesting. That's because you're a super Aspie, you're good at explaining. Click on one of those two rectangle boxes if you want the conversation to continue. This is between you and me, and if you want to keep going, Just click on one of the boxes and we'll keep our conversation for as long as you want. Totally up to you.